Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Before I kick things off, I think all of you should give yourself a pat on the back for surviving, reinforced, and staying all the way to the end.
Last one.
You guys are the true survivors. So, my name is Kevin. I'm delighted to have you guys here joining us for this last session. With me is Ross Warren, and today we'll be talking about how to operationalize Amazon Security Lake with analytics and generative AI. So Ross is gonna kick things off. We wanna keep things as interactive as possible, so if you have any questions, feel free to put up your hand. We'll be walking around and ask us as many questions as you like. So Ross, all yours.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Yeah, there's no mic to hand around, so if you've got questions, shout them, or we'll try to come down and listen and capture them. But you can certainly ask questions whenever you want. There actually will be time at the end, hopefully if we time this right, for questions at the end also. But interactive, both Kevin and I don't mind being interrupted at all. Sorry. How much time do you spend wrangling and managing logs? Is it everybody's favorite activity to go look at logs? Yes? Okay, good. Wouldn't you rather be looking for security incidents or findings or things? No? What are the challenges we see today, and kind of why did Security Lake come into existence a couple years ago? So we're going to be talking a little bit about Security Lake. It was in the title. Formerly, I was the product SA on this Security Lake team. I've now moved to security engineering, but supporting Kevin in his cool demos that we're going to see with some Q and Bedrock and Security Lake integrations. But why did Security Lake come into existence? Right? We all know there's more and more log data. It's in so many different formats, and it is sometimes just really, really tough to start that job of wrangling the logs and getting them all in the same place. And they just keep growing. When do you stop and say, no more logs? You can't. Somebody's going to want more logs. There's this new system that's going to come on board that's producing more logs, and we got to continually, the volume just continues to grow and grow and grow. Great, we've got them sitting in a place in 14 S3 buckets in 14 different accounts. And what formats are they? Who owns them? Who has access to them? These are all some of the things that we heard from customers as we were building Security Lake. And now that Security Lake is 2.5, 3 years old, we're hearing from customers that we actually are solving these problems for them. We'll talk a little bit more about Security Lake in just a second and kind of what's happening underneath. Is everybody familiar with these different kinds of logs? Is anybody paying attention? Okay, we got some hands. Right? These are really the core logs. There's more logs at AWS, but right, CloudTrail, API calls, DNS logs, if you're using any of the Route 53, that's a very, very chatty log. VPC flow logs. What is the connections? What are happening either in my instances, in my workloads, or out to the internet? CloudTrail data events. Who's writing, what's writing, who's pulling data from my S3 buckets. We've got some EKS clusters out there. I want to pull in those logs and see what's actually happening with those. And WAF logs. So not surprisingly, Security Lake, out of the box, supports all of those logs and more to very easily bring in. Remember the first bullet point I said about managing the logs and figuring out where they are? We can very easily bring those in. Now, operationalizing them. Right, we've got those logs, and we also have findings. So Security Lake not only takes in logs, but I will also take in findings from Security Hub, from Guard Duty, from Inspector, and from Macy. And all of these and those logs are converted to OCSF. And who's not familiar with OCSF? Okay, a couple of people, that's fine. OCSF, Open Cybersecurity Schema Framework. It's been out in the industry now for a couple years. It's an open source. You can go join. If you're really a log geek like I am, you can go contribute to the community and influence what that schema looks like. That's a whole nother presentation. Just Google OCSF GitHub. Easiest way to start looking at that. All right. couple reInvents ago, I did a presentation with a customer. And they had a slide that was actually cleaner than this, but they had a before Security Lake and then an after Security Lake slide. And they had all of these lambdas that were getting logs from all of these different places, flow logs, and it was normalizing them and bringing them all in, and it was just a mess. They made it look nicer than that. And then afterwards, they had their log sources, Security Hub, and they were actually then using Datadog to do their analytics. It was 3 layers, and they were done. So I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but if you look, you can kind of recognize some of those icons we just talked about. Lambdas to do some ETL, to bring logs in. I've got CloudTrail. I've got VPC flow logs, all those AWS logs I talked about. There's, 17 different buckets, the little green buckets sitting there. Right, it's a mess, and this maybe is what it looks like in your organization before Security Lake. I'm not sure where things are. There's lots of volume, and I'm not sure who has it. InfoSec needs these logs, prod needs these logs, AI needs these logs. So how does it look after Security Lake? Kevin made a nice little automation to make it look a lot nicer, right? We now have all those AWS logs across the top there. I can very easily bring those into and normalize them into Security Lake. Now that it's all in Security Lake with managed buckets, it's all normalized, and I am automatically getting any new logs in any new accounts as they come into my organization. Now I can think about automation. I've got a standardized format that I can start doing anything. Lambdas, SQS notifications. I don't know what the little pink one with the arrows is. But now I've got it in one central place. And now Security Lake actually helps me control who has access to that. Previously, if they were in 17 different buckets, I'm not going to sure where it is, who has access. Security Lake and the delegated administrator can control that Kevin can only get VPC flow logs. Mark can only get CloudTrail logs from this account. And he can either bring them into Athena, who loves SQL. They could send them to Splunk. Or they could use them in Bedrock, which we'll see a little bit later. So that's Security Lake, kind of in a very, very quick introduction. If you haven't seen it, you hadn't looked at it, if you go on YouTube and Google, look for the guy in a blue shirt, you'll see some other presentations on Security Lake over the last couple years. But what happens under the hood? I kind of revealed this a little bit. If we look at AWS log sources, that was the thing across the top. The Security Lake service, when you say, I want VPC flow logs, it's going to, from the backplane, it's going to start bringing in flow logs. And then in the service account, I'm going to transform them to that OCSF, that schema that I talked about. Put them in the bucket that's in your account regionally. And now they're in a bucket. It's AWS. I want to have glue crawlers set up to automatically start building tables on them so that you can get them in Athena, so you can start querying them, so you could start sending them to something else. I didn't really talk about third-party logs, but up where it says other providers, if you look at the Security Lake partner list, there are a bunch of providers that integrate directly with Security Lake that can put data in OCSF into those buckets, and then we'll talk about what happens on the right side, on your side. Wiz, Cribble, those two have just come off the top of my head. I didn't prepare that part. But there's a ton of partners who can work with Security Lake and putting data in OCSF. So we've got all that data in the buckets. We know who has access to it. We want to control that. If we look at the other side, I already mentioned Athena. Some of my customers start up Security Lake, start building, bringing those logs in, and they go immediately to Athena and start kind of just querying, hey, what does this look like? And if you want to look at that, I've provided a bunch of Athena queries in the Security Lake documentation that really is a Kickstarter for you to start looking for things. For IP addresses, for Kevin's account doing malicious activity from Singapore. whatever you want to do. They're good kickoff points to start looking at doing SQL queries. I know we all love writing SQL, and so this will help you on that wonderful journey of writing more SQL. But the other side of that partner list is also folks who can consume and use those security models that I've set up in Security Lake and consume that data. So Splunk, Cribble, Datadog, Trellix, SageMaker, OpenSearch. Kevin's gonna talk about OpenSearch and SageMaker?
Bedrock.
Bedrock, sorry, a little bit later. But these are subscribers, people who can then consume the data. And I can control that. Maybe I don't wanna send VPC flow to Splunk. And so the Security Lake administrator says, I only wanna send CloudTrail, Route 53, and ECAS logs to Splunk. I can control that. I now move to a different SIM. I can turn off that subscriber and start putting that data then into my other SIM. It's great for sort of A/B, sort of proof of concepts if you're looking at different SIMs or different analytics solutions. I got 5 minutes left. All right, I mentioned VPC flow a couple times. And last night, when I couldn't fall asleep, I was trying to count how many steps there are to set up VPC flow in your account today. Anybody guess? I don't have a number. Any guesses? 4 or 5? A lot more than that. If I'm gonna set up, and let's try to go through it together really quickly. Log in, go to EC2, go to VPC flow, find the first VPC that you wanna enable VPC flow logging on. But wait, do you have a bucket set up for VPC? No, so you gotta go pivot and make a bucket, name it, make sure it's not public, write permissions, come back to VPC flow, VPC, and then you've got to pick, do I want all the fields? What version do I want? Do I want it in Parquet? Do I want it in gzip? There's probably 12, if somebody was counting along with me. There's probably 12 steps. That's for one VPC.
In one account.
In one account, okay? Yes, you can script a lot of that, but then who's babysitting that script? There are a lot of good scripts out there. I talked to a lot of good companies who have that done. They have figured that out. But for the normals, I'm gonna show you a lot easier way to do that. Now remember, that was 12 steps kind of for one account in one region in one VPC, okay? My first demo. So we're in the Security Lake console in Kevin's account. He trusted me this wouldn't break his demo. And I've got, remember I had all those different log source types up on the screen? You could see VPC flow is disabled in this account. I'm going to configure it. We're on the latest 2.0 version. And I've got, how many regions we got selected? Kevin has 12, already enabled 12 Security Lake regions. And it was really easy. For him, it was just select and enable those regions. I'm not trying to hide a step here. It's less than creating a bucket. So I then want to select all my regions. We're gonna confirm. And now Security Lake is now collecting VPC flow in all my accounts in the org, in all the VPCs, and in all 12 regions. If there was time, I would show you that that's true and we can start looking at it, but he's gonna look at, you're gonna look at flow logs, he'll look at the flow logs in a different account. But that's how easy it is with Security Lake to enable like flow. Trail, DNS, all those things are as easy. You saw them on the screen there. Okay, so that was a little bit about Security Lake. And if you take a step back and think about what we just did, we took storage and collection of logs and made a lake. Well, that's what a data lake is, right? It's about normalizing, it's about putting it in place, it's about putting security controls on that data. And if you are watching the market, if you're a geek like me looking at this, we really have started to see, right on the same time Security Lake was coming out, storage and analytics are now separate, or people are moving towards that. Lots of the major vendors are not building a data lake anymore, they're relying on other lakes. like Security Lake. New analytic vendors are coming up and they have no code that is data lake code. They're relying on iceberg tables. They're relying on Security Lake to do other things for them to get that data. Kevin's going to show you, as I said, some of the analytics stuff from AWS, but there are plenty of other partners that were here this week that have actually shown and demonstrated using Security Lake in their analytics alongside. Kevin wants me to mention iceberg. He mentioned it 5 minutes before we even started this presentation. As Security Lake evolved, if you're familiar with storing data in S3, right, it's Hive storage. It's been Hive storage for a long time. And it builds then Hive compatible tables in Athena. You starting kind of with Security Lake and then S3 tables. AWS is really focused on utilizing the benefits of iceberg in our data lakes in S3 tables. Iceberg is quicker. You can do schema rollbacks. You can do schema evolution. The partitioning, there's some hidden partitioning that makes it quicker. And it is also open source format, you want to call it that? It's an open source project. And so there are plenty of other folks, now that Security Lake is writing iceberg tables, there's plenty of other folks who know how to speak iceberg versus Hive, and now are utilizing that in that subscriber method. Remember, that's the far right side of the screen from earlier on. And you get the benefits in Athena. When we turned on iceberg, when I was beta testing iceberg with Security Lake, my queries that I couldn't run before, looking for an IP address over a year's worth of data, sorry, Athena. In Hive, it took a long time and timed out. When I started using Athena, iceberg and compaction and all those benefits, it was 5 minutes. For a year's worth of data, that's not too bad to find that one IP address needle in a haystack. So Security Lake, iceberg, a lot of benefits. I certainly can talk for another 2 hours if they let me about Security Lake, but I really want to shut up and let Kevin start talking and showing you some really cool stuff.
Thank you, Ross.
Absolutely.
So one really cool thing about the fact that we're splitting the data and analytics plane, right, is that you can really do a lot you can really make your detection cost effective. So what I will show you in a minute, and this is going to be how the rest of this presentation is going to work. I will show you build out an architecture, and then I'll show you what that code or how that architecture works, right, or bits and pieces of it. If you'd like to zoom in on a certain aspect, feel free to ask. So we have Security Lake, we have an OpenSearch ingestion pipeline, and it's sending to OpenSearch service. We can use this plugin called OpenSearch Security Analytics to detect anomalous activity with Sigma rules. And what's really cool, right? What's really cool here is that because our historical log data is in Security Lake, our OpenSearch, our analytics plane, really only needs to store the most recent logs, so maybe 15 days, or the most relevant logs, maybe just prod. So this allows you to scale down your analytics clusters and as a result, save a lot of money. So now for today's demo, we're gonna role play a bit, right? I brought my little role play hat. We're gonna put on the hat of an incident responder. So how many of you are having problems hiring skilled security professionals? Yeah, all of you. So really common problem. So pretend to be a junior incident responder. You've just joined a company, you know some stuff from school, but you're new to AWS, you're new to cloud, all right? So now, I'm an incident responder. I'm gonna go, there we go. So I go to OpenSearch. This is my analytics plane. I wake up and I see I have 45 alerts. This is really, really bad, okay? So all of these alerts are being generated from logs from Security Lake. And I begin to see, oh wow, someone tried to turn CloudTrail off, someone tried to open port 22, this is really bad. Let's start with an investigation, right? There we go. So I'm gonna click into any one of these, and I'm an incident responder. We're gonna figure out how to investigate. We need to figure out who did it, we need to figure out a timeline, we need to figure out the resources that were impacted so we can contain it. So we scroll down here, and we look. So there was a simple thing. So I'm going to walk through this slowly. It is a stop logging operation. So someone tried to turn off a CloudTrail trail. Thankfully, they got access denied. And we can figure out the user. So the user is an assumed role, okay, and it's called Mr. Anderson 404. So as an incident responder, I know that Mr. Anderson 404 may be compromised. Maybe he just ran a bad script. Maybe he's compromised. I want to investigate. So what normally happens is that right now I will need to go into CloudTrail. I'll need to dive into the logs. I'll need to figure out a query, then analyze the result of that query, and then write a report. All of it's very time-consuming, and as a junior incident responder, I'm not very good at it. So, which leads me to the next thing. We want to use Amazon Bedrock to empower your junior incident responder to investigate and remediate. So what I will show you is from my laptop. First, we're going to query Security Lake with Amazon Athena to get the latest schema. So I call this a poor man's MCP server. To me, it's very cost-effective. So then, from there, we're going to use that schema information, pass that to Bedrock along with the human query. Bedrock, then we take that query, we query Athena to get the data from Security Lake, and Bedrock will return the result in natural language. After that, remember, I'm a junior incident responder. Maybe I need to confirm whether this is malicious or not. We're going to ask our corporate security policy, and we're going to figure out if what is happening is bad. If what's happening is bad, we can request remediation. I'll show you how Bedrock selects the right remediation function, and we are much more secure than we were before. So let's dive into the code. This is a code talk, and I've been dying to show this. So I'm going to walk through this code slowly. A lot of this is boilerplate, so I'm not going to go into the details. So we start with some setup and imports, nothing exciting here. This is the first interesting helper function, right? This is Bedrock. So we have a Bedrock function. We're using the Converse API. So we're going to be using this for most of today. We are going to be talking to Bedrock and getting a response back. Then we have a couple of helper functions to query Athena. Straightforward. We're going to start a query. If you don't know, Athena is asynchronous. So we're going to start. We're going to wait for it to complete. Then we're going to get the results once it's completed, and then save it as a pandas data frame for further analysis.
Now, these helper scripts are all pretty boilerplate, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, these are all really boilerplate. I wrote this with Q developer. There's nothing exciting about this. These
Until you get down the bottom.
Correct. Just these helper functions are pretty straightforward. And then we'll also download the result as a CSV for future analysis. And finally, we clean the response and make it pretty. So remember, junior incident responder. I don't know how many of you are good at SQL. I am horrible at SQL. Even till today, if I'm writing a SQL query to try and query CloudTrail, I have to look up all the different APIs. I have to look up what's the correct syntax. It is very difficult for me.
You have to ask Ross.
I have to ask Ross, absolutely. So first, we're going to query the table to get the latest schema, right? So this is a very simple call. It's just describing the table. In this case, we have a table called CloudTrail view. So I'm going to pull that out. So
this is Security Lake data,
correct.
Right?
This is Security Lake data.
Tables. Yep. Okay.
So I want to point out one thing. We are querying a table called CloudTrail view. It's a special view and a local database. This is all Security Lake data. But the reason why I created a special view is because if you don't know OCSF, the data is very nested. This view unnests it and limits it to maybe the most important information that I determine. This means that when the query gets put into Bedrock, you save money on tokens and processing time. So we've run it. We've got one row, straightforward. And then now we're going to generate the SQL query. So this is where the Bedrock starts, right? I'm going to walk through this slowly. First thing, we're using Nova Lite here. Model choice is important, and as you begin to build things like this out, I might make this bigger. As you begin to build things like this out, you might want to think about what model. You can experiment with different models, see which is better. We use Nova Lite here because it's really simple, right? We're just generating a SQL query. We don't need a big model for this. We have a system prompt. So prompt engineering here is very important. We tell it you have a view called this view. It has parsed OCSF data, and we give it some tips when searching. When searching for terms, use like operators, so it's more likely to get a result. Read only by default should be false. What this means is that you only get mutative actions rather than all the get and describes, which kind of which kind of makes it more difficult to search for. And we provide some sample questions and queries. So straightforward. This will help the model write a correct query. So, and then finally, this is the message. All that system prompt aside, this is the final message. Given the following request, generate a SQL query for security lake data, and only provide the SQL query. Okay, so we're going to generate the query. So earlier we found a bad user. His name is Mr. Anderson 404. We're gonna ask it, what did user Mr. Anderson 404 do in the last 2 days? Provide a timeline. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that works. Okay. And then it's gonna, as you can see, it's really quick. It's Nova Lite. It's really quick, and it's already given me a SQL query, right? As in, if, let's say, for example, I run this query, it doesn't work, I can always modify it later. But now we're gonna run it. So we run this.
So that's important. That was natural language. Remember that junior incident responder doesn't know. He just knows Anderson 404, Mr. Anderson, has got an issue. And now we can now get that SQL query. It's faster, it's easier, and maybe they're learning a little bit about SQL too as they're going along here. Was there a question?
In this case, the analyst would need permission to Bedrock and everything, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
the role, yes.
But the nice thing about this is that the analyst only needs read-only permission. They don't need they only need read-only permission, only permissions to invoke the models. So if you're concerned about your analyst breaking something in production, that's helpful to know. Okay.
Junior analysts should have a role like that. Anyway, right.
So we've got our results very quickly from Athena. And now, so this is what CloudTrail logs look like. This is truncated, but it looks like this. And as an incident responder, what I used to do is I pull up the CSV, I go into Excel, I make a pivot table, and then I begin trying to filter by day, and I begin logging down the most important activity. It's very manual, and it's very time-consuming. And as a junior incident responder, I might not know which things to look out for, because remember, I'm new to the cloud. So we'll get Bedrock to process the logs. So we have a new function. We're gonna analyze the results. Here we're using Claude 3.5. And we have another system prompt. We are a cybersecurity analyst who will be provided security logs based on OCSF, vverbose, highlight which calls were successful and which failed, list impacted resources in detail, and I even provided a format it should follow. So the cool thing is that with all these baked-in queries, you can really empower your incident responders to get them up to speed very quickly. So I'm gonna run this, and then, then we also format the response and clean it up. So we're gonna run the command now, and this will take about 20 seconds to figure itself out. And we're gonna get something nice. So just like what I said, I used to do this manually. It'll take me about an hour, depending on how many logs there are. But now it's gonna take about 20-ish seconds, and I'll have something to get started with. There we go. So as you can see, you can see the tokens. I'm not gonna dive into the detail. But here, I'll break down Mr. Anderson's activities by account. So remember, like what Ross said earlier, Security Lake is collecting secure data across accounts and across regions. So as you can see, we start off with account 0363. It created 3 IAM users, attached administrator access policy. It modified 15 security groups across multiple regions to allow port 22 from anywhere. So it's starting to look pretty bad. It tried to stop CloudTrail logging. Secondly, from this other account, same thing, created 3 IAM users, attached administrator access, modified security groups. So in 20 seconds, I have something useful that I can work with as a security analyst. So to us, we're really smart people. We know that this is really bad. We have evidence of persistence. We have evidence that someone's trying to open security groups. It's time to take action. But I'm a junior analyst. Maybe I don't know that, right? So I'm gonna just copy this. Let's say I'm a junior analyst. I copy this. And now we're going to ask whether it contravenes our security policies. So in Bedrock, there's this thing called a knowledge base where you can upload files or content that belongs to your company. In this case, we have a file with our corporate security policy. And we're gonna use this new API called retrieve and generate. So we're gonna use the retrieve and generate API to check against our knowledge base. Same thing, we're gonna answer this query based on corporate security policy. And we specify that anything not specifically allowed by the policy is denied. So we have deny by default. And the model we're using here is Nova Pro. So another model, I found that this one works best. And then let me just run this to make sure the code works. Okay, and then finally, we format the knowledge-based response so it looks pretty. So I'm just going to paste that. So I'm a junior analyst. I'm just copying, pasting things, trying to figure things out. We created 3 IAM users. Does this contravene our security policy? And we get a simple response based on these results. Creating IAM users does contravene the security policy. And the policy states, they even tell me what it states. IAM policies can only be attached to group or roles, which implies that the creation of IAM users is not allowed. So this looks bad. Let's try and fix things, right? So next thing, what security groups have port 22 open? So we saw 15 in each account. We're going to figure out which one was modified so we can begin to fix it. So we're going to run another query. And observe here that we don't need to make another query to Athena. We're going to continue using the logs that we extracted earlier. So we're going to run that. And doing this helps you save money because you don't need to keep making calls to Athena and things like that. And it will help with your, what's that called? It will help your security analysts be more cost effective. Now, while this loads, oh, there we go, it loaded. Okay, so we get a list. In this account, 0363, we have all these security groups. And we have a failed call, and we have, on this account, we have 9 security groups, and we have them all. So if I were to do this by hand, it would take a lot of time. It took me 20 seconds to get this output right away. And now, as an analyst, I want to fix it. So last thing we're going to do for this bit of the demo, we're going to invoke an agent. So we're going to invoke a Bedrock agent. It is going to use the invoke agent API. Again, it's a different API. So if you've noticed, when it comes to stitching things in Bedrock together, there's a bunch of different APIs you can use. And that's something to note when you're building things like this out. And I'm going to go into, I don't know how familiar you guys are with agents, but I'm just going to show you what it looks like in the console. So this is the security remediation agent I've built. It's using Claude 3.5. I've run some tests. Claude 3.5 works the best. And how agents work, I don't know why this is, let me make this bigger. How agents work, essentially you give it instructions. So I told it you have access to multiple pieces of security automation, such as closing port 22, deleting users, revoking credentials. Based on the prompt, select the right action. So what's really cool, and you'll see it later, is that when I make a call to Bedrock later, I don't have to explicitly tell it which action to take. It will interpret the prompt, determine my intent, and choose the right thing to do. So in terms of action groups, these are just Lambda functions which run. And how Bedrock knows which to choose is, if I open this, there we go. The function of the action group or the function of the API is defined in open API format. So this is how Bedrock is able to understand what it has access to and what tool it should use. Okay, so let's see it in action. Oops. So we are going to, so first we're going to revoke credentials, right? So Mr. Anderson created a whole bunch of users. We're going to revoke those credentials so that they don't do anything more. So let's just pick one of them. Okay. All right. Okay, so it will begin to run. And this may not actually work because I don't know which account this one sits in. There we go, it worked. All right, so credentials for the IAM user was successfully revoked. If it didn't work, it will fail gracefully and tell you that maybe it didn't find the user. So this is one limitation or one thing to note when you're building automation like this, right? I have Lambda functions running in this account. If I want to take action in another account, I need to do something like a cross-account assume role in order to take action there. Okay, now the next thing, we want to close a port. So close port 22 for the security group, and we're just going to find the, yeah, this is the right account now, so this should work. Put that there. And as you can see, like what I said earlier, that I'm not asking Bedrock to run a specific command. I am just telling it in natural language what I want to be done, revoke credentials or delete, remove port 22. Bedrock is able to understand the intent and choose the right action group to take. All right, so I want to pause here and summarize what we've done as junior incident responders, right? So we got an alert from the incident. We had a malicious user called we had a user called Mr. Anderson doing some suspicious things. We were able to generate a query with natural language. And we ran that query in Athena. We got the results. And once we got those results, we were able to, Bedrock was able to tell us, interpret the output for us in natural language. Then it was able to tell us that it contravened the security policy, and then it allowed us to take action. So one last cool thing I want to show you is Q Developer. So Q Developer can read files in your IDE, so which is why I downloaded this CSV. So this CSV is just the output that from the Athena query we ran. So there we go. All right, I'm going to close this so you don't see. All right, so let's say, for example, I ask it, tell me a timeline of events from the open file. Very similar to what we just did, it will read the file. It will then write a timeline, and then we can continue this conversation with the file. So the goal. Sorry? No, no system prompts. This is just default. So let me make this bigger. There we go. So as you can see, we have a timeline. First, it even tells me there was a first attack wave. It created 3 IAM users, as you all have seen from the output, attached administrator, removed security groups, and then it hit this other account, same thing. And it even gives me some key observations, even stating that the role name suggests a compromised SSO user with elevated permissions. This is because the role name is literally called compromised user permissions. So funny story, when I was testing this, we started with a user called compromised user, like that was its username. And the Q developer told me, this seems like a test event because the username is compromised user. So it's really cool. And my goal here today is just show you different ways to run analytics on security lake data. You don't have to use all of them. You don't have to use all of them together, but pick the right tool for your team, right? All right. Okay, so a few things before we wrap up here, right? First is that what I did was I used the Jupyter Notebook because I wanted to show you step by step. Can you make this into some kind of really cool thing with LangChain or LangChain and MCPs and using lots of tools? Yes, darn it. Yes, you can. I didn't because I'm not very good at it, and it was also, from a token perspective, very expensive. So I guess the point I'm trying to drive at, you don't need to go for the most expensive, fanciest things. Just use what works for you. And the second thing is that everything that we've done today so far is in the IDE. So some people like that. Some security analysts like being in VS Code. They like working like this, but not everyone does. So the next thing I want to show is an interesting use case. It uses this service called Amazon Q Business. So if you don't know, Q Business is a generative AI assistant. It can do a whole bunch of things. We can use it for some security and analyst work. So the idea is that we already have that result that Bedrock gave us earlier. Maybe we have some UI, but Q Business can't really generate that result. So as a junior incident responder, I'm going to put it in Q Business. We're going to ask it as well, does this contravene our security policy? And then from there, we want to remediate. Same thing. We want to fix things. And what's cool about using Q Business is that the authentication is handled through OAuth. So when I make that call, I will have to authenticate with Cognito with OAuth flows. And then API Gateway will validate that token with the Cognito authorizer. And then we run a Lambda function to modify the resources and make changes in the environment. So I want to provide this architecture because a lot of customers don't set up the Cognito piece to do the OAuth authentication, and then as a result, you have an unauthenticated function lying around. Not great. So this is how you can do it. So let's see what it looks like in action, right?
Are we still the junior analyst?
We are still a junior analyst. Correct. So we had a whole, so earlier, remember, we got a result that a lot of port 22 was open, right? So, oh yeah, thanks. So this is what Q business looks like. I have some text earlier because I was making sure the demo worked. But let's say I'm a junior analyst. Does having port 22 open break security policy? So, all right. So, a few things to point out before while this loads. We're querying company knowledge. So it's, again, that same knowledge base that we have, that one Word file that we shunted in, and it's able to talk to it. Q Business also has a bunch of different connectors. So if you're using something like Confluence or Jira, you can build integrations and connectors for all of that. So maybe like, I don't have it read, I don't have it prepared, but essentially, maybe create a Jira ticket based on an incident, right? So does having port 22 open break security policy? Okay, so it will begin to interrogate that document and it will tell us whether it does or not. Remember, junior analyst, I don't know much about AWS. I'm not sure if this is really bad or not. And now this will guide me along my way.
How'd you get hired if you don't know the 22?
Ross, you... Well, I know. Okay, so opening port 22 will break security policy as it violates multiple mandatory security requirements. So a few things. It tells me exactly where it got this piece of information. So this is the doc. It tells us the design. It tells us what is in the design. I can't scroll down. If I go to sources, it tells me exactly the doc that's pulling from. So you can be assured that it's not hallucinating. It's not going crazy. You can be assured of the validity of the output. Now, same thing, we're going to ask it to take action. So similar as Bedrock, we are going to ask it a question in natural language. In this case, we don't need to make a different API call. Q Business is able to interpret our intent. So we're just going to find another security group that we had from here. If I scroll all the way down, OK, this one now. So if I just tell it, close port 22 for this. So then it'll go through that flow. I authenticated already before the demo started. Let's see if it asks me for authentication again. But it will go through that flow. It will detect my intent, realize that I want to do something, take action, ask for authentication. So as you can see, it's figured out I want to do something. It gave me a nice UI to do it. Submit. If I haven't authenticated, at this point, it'll ask me to authenticate. It has, yep. All right, there we go. So you can see the authentication flow. So it's, there we go. It's with IAM Identity Center. And that should work. So while this process happens, any questions? All good, OK. Yeah, let it load in. No, it doesn't. So it's authorized. Now it's going to close the security group. So just think about it this way, right? Not all incident responders or not all security engineers are confident in the console. Not all of them like working in the not all of them like working in the IDE. Oh, OK. So as you can see, we have graceful failure as well. It tells me that the security group doesn't exist, probably because I picked it from the wrong account. Let's try that one again. Yeah, it is the wrong account. Let me scroll down. There we go. This one now. OK, third one. Oops. Group instead. There we go. So like I was saying, not everyone likes to work in the IDE. Some people like a more visual interface. Q Business can be very helpful for that. And just to show you how this works, Q Business is also set up to just close port 22 and also delete a user. Let's submit that again. All right, pause. Any questions? Yes? So the reason why I want to use Q, like what I said, is that the reason why I want to use Q is because not everyone is comfortable in the IDE, right? So if you've built a tool that can do all of that with a nice UI, great. But not everyone can do that, and that's why Q is just a fully managed service that helps you get started really easily, which is why I can do it. But for some reason, it's not working today. The demo gods is not with me. That's OK. So imagine that it worked, all right? It's supposed to work. We can try delete user one. So it's very similar to the Bedrock one. So if I show you what it looks like. Yes, it's on the plugin. So as you can see, we have closed port 22. And very similar to Bedrock, I have to edit this, I believe, to show you what it looks like. It's similarly defined in Open API as well. That's how Q understands what actions it has access to and what it can do, and how to interpret what's coming back from the API. This is all Lambda functions, so it's nothing fancy. So we have 5 minutes, I can demo it. We are going to show you Q CLI, which can do that. And we'll talk about when to use it. So like what I said earlier, like similar to Richard's question, right? Who's doing what? If I was a junior developer or junior security engineer, I may not want to build, I may not know how to build all this. You may not trust me with mutative power over the account, except in a limited series of scenarios. That's when these playbooks and these automations can be helpful. Okay, let's just make sure that our user was deleted. There we go, so this one actually worked. So this is what it looks like when it works. Okay, so now we're gonna take the junior incident responder hat off, because now we're gonna be a bit more senior. And I'm gonna show you one last demo while we have 5 minutes. 4.5, which is Q developer, so there's Q CLI. Very similar to the flow earlier. We're going to use the console. We have an MCP server running on local to connect to Athena. It'll query Security Lake, get the results, same thing. And then you can also just tell it close a certain security group. So this is the most non-deterministic demo out of all the demos today, which is why Q CLI is more for a senior engineer who knows what's going on, can read the output, and then adjust accordingly. So let's go into here, and it's
One that has the highest percentage of not working.
yes. Okay, so as you can see, I type Q chat and make this bigger. Oh right, sorry, my bad. I keep forgetting. Thanks, Ross. So there we go. All right, so I type Q chat. As you can see, I have one MCP server, Athena, which was loaded, and now we're chatting with Claude 3.7. I'm going to show you a bit of the MCP server, so show me all the, oops. So I'm going to ask it to show me all tables in US West 2. Q CLI has a bunch of tools there's access to, including the AWS API, AWS documentation. So it will choose the right tool that it wants to interact with in order to fulfill your request. So I hope the people in the back can see, but essentially it's running CLI command to query, glue, and understand the tables. From a permissioning standpoint, any read actions are trusted by default, so it'll just go and do its thing. Mutative actions, it will ask you for confirmation before it does it, and hopefully I'll get to show it to you. There we go. Any questions? This thing chugs along. Yes. Okay, so if you've seen the output, we've gotten the tables. We're gonna ask what IAM users were created in the last 2 days. So it's gonna realize that it needs to query Athena, and then from there it will create a query, and it will run that query and interpret the results. The nice thing about Q CLI is that if it runs a query and the query fails, or it gets a weird result, it will try to rewrite the query automatically to get a result. So that's something helpful about the Q CLI. So as you can see, it's asking me whether I want to allow this action because it's doing something that's not allowed by default. I'm just going to trust. So for this whole session, it will just keep going. So as you can see, it's written the SQL query. There is no prompt, what's that called? There's no prompt tuning here. I don't have a prompt template. I didn't do anything. This is raw Q CLI, which is why it's the most non-deterministic demo today. So, but we have a result. Oh, we do have a result. There are some, okay. So as you can see, there's some create user operations, not all. We're modifying the query. We're going to try that again. Yeah, so. Yeah.
How do you put a guardrail so that I can't type retrieve password or delete everything?
Because the agents that you create are created by you. So as long as you don't create an agent, it's not like the Lambda function has access to the AWS API and can go crazy. It can only do one thing, which is delete a user. Yes. OK, so we got a result. We have 3 users that were created. And then very similar output to what we saw just now. Now we're going to delete it, like what you said. OK, in this account. Fingers crossed this isn't deleted.
To follow that up, the role that's running QBusiness should only have the permissions that are possible in the plan base. That would be another program. And log it, and alert it, and send it to somewhere else if somebody is deleting or changing something, right?
So I've asked Q developer to delete the user. As you can see, it's asking for permission to run the action because it's mutative. Oh, OK, it's already been deleted. Oh, OK, there's some policies attached to it. But you see the point, right? And now it'll try and work through how to delete it because this initial one failed. So to wrap up, because we're running out of time, Q developer is really cool. For someone who's more advanced, they know what they're doing in the console. Q CLI is really powerful. So you don't want to give a new security engineer this. The security engineer types delete all EC2 instances, and then you begin to have problems. So that's to just summarize. I've given you a whole toolbox of things you can use to operationalize Security Lake. We talked about OpenSearch for detection and analytics. We talked about Bedrock to analyze the logs, parse, create queries, parse logs. We talked about QBusiness to provide a very nice visual interface to take action. And finally, we did a really quick demo of QCLI, which is really powerful and something for more advanced users. So Ross, back to you.
Questions if anybody wants.
Yeah, so thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us on the last session of Reinforce. Please complete the session survey in the app so you can tell us how well or badly we did. If you want to see more demos, you think QCLI was bad, yeah, put it all in there.